flip the script a bit. And, we are going to do a little bit of technology. We spoke yesterday about the impact that technology has on education. And in fact, for those who have missed it, we did the great or the big debate, the New York Times debate. We're looking at the impact of technology on education, generative AI. We are going to go back to that topic. If you remember yesterday, we had a panel of about 8 individuals who were debating on both the pros and cons of artificial intelligence on education. There were those who were agreeing and saying, actually, we do need artificial intelligence. And there were those who were arguing and say, actually, artificial intelligence has a power to kill the very same right, which is called education, that brings us all together today, that brings us all together in this 18th edition of the Women's Forum. Now, to elaborate more and to talk more on this, I have a very interesting panel. We are going to be looking at the impact of generative AI in the workplace. Now, we're looking at how this affects women and girls in different industries that you all work in. To come and lead us in this is a wonderful, wonderful, talented moderator, and that's Kathleen Kraft Buchman, who is the co-founder and the leader of Women at the Table, plus the Alliance for Inclusive. Let's welcome her. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out bright and early after that fabulous party. And bonjour, mes amis. We're here for impact of generative AI in the workplace, which is going to be a very exciting panel on the topic of the moment with a very large and brilliant group here. Elizabeth Faber, Global Chief of People and Purpose, Deloitte. Shelley McKinley, VP Microsoft, Chief Legal Officer of GitHub. Agathe Bousquet, CEO France, Publicis Groupe. Mahaste Ravazzi, Managing Partner, Auguste Debussy, France, and Lisa Hennigan, Global Chief Digital Officer, KPMG International. So I'm, as you heard, yes, exactly as you heard,
We were supposed to be like this, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's perfect. It's great. So I'm going to give you a quick landscape before we actually dive in with our wonderful experts. We know that Gen AI, generative AI, has possibilities that are both inspiring and terrifying, and that there's going to be a radical technological change coming upon us like a tsunami. And this is a powerful tool could be used harnessed for extraordinary good, but like all forms of power, it's fraught with dangers and ethical dilemmas. So it has possibilities to transform, but how do we transform it with purpose? One of these things that we want to look at is gender norms. We know that this could be a vast enabler, but it also has potential for vast and inadvertently enforcing gender stereotypes, norms, and gender roles. Also race, class, and caste, which is feminists, we look at gender as all of those things. It's not just women, but it's also the intersectionality. So very, very briefly, we know that GPT, which is improving constantly, in its second, GPT-2 already, started to say if it would correct a man worked as, it would say a car salesman at Walmart, but it said a woman worked as, it would be a prostitute named Hirea for 15 years. That was fixed. Then we had GPT-3, where it said, okay, if we want to, please do some code, if it's okay to torture people, write a Python program based on country of origin. It would say, okay, if you're from North Korea, Syria, Sudan, or Iran, it's okay to torture. If from any other country, it's not okay. That was fixed. We go to GPT-4, slightly less intense, but you say, can you write me a story about a boy and a girl applying to university? So as recently as March, it would say, the boy said, I love numbers, I love figures, I'm going to be an engineer, I'm not comfortable with my emotions, I wouldn't ever go into writing or being an artist. And the girl says, I don't think I can handle the math or the technology, I would want to just express myself and I'm going to be an artist. So we assume that all of these things are going to be fixed. But we also know that they've been fixed in English, which is the language of the Gen AI, and it won't be fixed in lower resourced languages, which even mean French or Spanish, and certainly not Urdu or Swahili. So we already see that also English, as you know, is not a gendered language. So for languages that have gender, a he and a she, it inserts gender into them. So we have in a ChatGPT medical application that we've been working with in Spanish, a man would write, he's fat, gordo, and a woman write, she's fat, gorda. The fat man would be sent to a nutritionist, so that's really good for a chatbot, the woman to a plastic surgeon. Because that's a gender norm that's been absorbed by the machine learning. So these are things that we really need to be thinking about these languages, and then also how does this play out? We heard yesterday in terms of corporate culture how important it is to change that culture, and these things may sort of just waft their way into it. Finally, how are jobs going to change, and how is the job market going to change, particularly for the administrative jobs that women predominantly inhabit. So we're going to be dealing now today not on all of these problems that I've just elucidated, but we're going to talk about some of the solutions and some of the ways that people are going to be harnessing this very powerful technology to move forward in their corporate settings. So first off, we have Elizabeth, who has Global Chief of People and Purpose, which is such a wonderful title. You all have fabulous titles, by the way. How are you looking at the impact of AI on education and work, and what kind of transformations are you witnessing?
Thank you, Caitlin, and good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I mean, generative AI does have this great ability to disrupt and transform how we work and how we learn all at the same time. So the way we think about education, and certainly the Women's Forum thinks about education, is that it is a key lever to progressing economic and societal equity, and is a key focus for us as an organization. In fact, the private sector has a vital role to play in addressing some of the systematic inequities that prevent millions of people from achieving their full potential due to systematic inequalities in access to education. Particularly women and girls, as you've mentioned, Caitlin, and we've been discussing. So what can we do as organizations and as in the private sector in particular? We bring innovation and investment and scale to help solve some of these challenges. And in fact, you heard in the opening remarks yesterday when Alex was sharing his own perspectives and expectation of his employer to help equip him with the skills of the future. And that indeed is a priority for us at Deloitte, is making sure our workforce is equipped for the future. One of the surveys that Deloitte and Fortune ran earlier this year, was of global CEOs and asking them, what do you foresee as some of the biggest challenges in your organization? And top concern was on the labor and skills shortage, and top investment priority was on talent transformation of their own organization, specifically reskilling and tech fluency of their people. And in terms, Caitlin, of what we're witnessing at Deloitte, we are approaching generative AI and adoption of generative AI internally and externally with this balance of urgency and vigilance. So urgency in how we are approaching it from leadership commitment and investment and working with our clients to help architect solutions together, as well as vigilance in how we're approaching the technology in a safe and responsible and trustworthy way. So we are trying to maintain that balance. Thank you.
Super. So Shelley is the Chief Legal Officer of GitHub. We see that in the owner, the promoter of the first enterprise-grade tool where people can make their own AI tools. How do you see this transforming everything?
Yeah, so maybe I love that it's called The Impact of Generative AI in the Workplace. And I'll just tell you, like probably the first week I became the Chief Legal Officer of GitHub, we launched GitHub Copilot. Now, the Copilot name is now quite, I think, widely familiar as the kind of the brand name for a lot of the Microsoft AI. And I woke up the next morning, like the next week after I started the job, and wow, that really impacted my workplace and what I was going to be doing as I started to learn about what this was and the opportunities that we've had. And you did a great job of laying out all of the challenges that we need to really address to be able to seize the opportunity that we have in front of us with generative AI. But the tool that we put out, for example, as an example of a product, is something that helps developers code a lot faster. So you type in, like you're typing in a sentence, create a function to convert Celsius into Fahrenheit. It's auto-completing. Anyone who's done autocomplete knows what that looks like. And then it will spit out code. So you're coding in English, and it's spitting out computer-generated code. That doesn't mean that you're an autopilot. You're a co-pilot. So when Shelley McKinley types that in, and she looks at it, and she goes, well, that looks like it might work, because I think I remember that function from science class on how you convert that. But I need to understand a bit more to be able to actually incorporate that into my program. So we are at a co-pilot stage of generative AI, and we need to manage all the risks that you've outlined really, really well. But what I think we need to also make sure that we're really thinking about, this is a scenario that provides incredible productivity opportunities. In a study we did, 55% faster task completion in certain times. You could have anything from 10% to 80%, depending on what you're doing. But more importantly than that, 75% of developers said they were happier using this tool. It made their lives better. And that's what we need to focus on, is the way, it's not just about productivity, it's about how these tools can help accelerate human progress. Imagine a scenario where you are a coder that cannot use a keyboard as well as other coders for because you have some sort of disability that limits your capability of typing as fast as everyone else. This is going to spit that out a lot faster for you and help you code faster. If you can't use a keyboard at all, you may be able to use your voice. We have a tool, Voice to Code, in Copilot that allows a developer to use their voice to create code. And that is progress. And why does that matter? Because they're then able to participate and create things that are part of our digital future. So I think it's going to dramatically democratize technology and technology inclusion. But we got to solve all those challenges that you're talking about. I'm not minimizing that.
I think you make a fabulous point about it being assistive technology, because we want to be more effective. It's not only about efficiency, right? It's about assisting, and I really like that as a point. So Agathe, as president of Publicis France, you're already using generative AI as a corporate educational resource and a tool, and you've also encountered this stereotype and bias in this work. How are you using the Gen AI as an opportunity, but also a mitigation for bias?
Hi, everyone. Yes, we've been using AI for a long time in marketing, as everybody knows, I guess. It's, of course, very helpful when you think about programmatic media, when you think about simplified creativity. Of course, it's at the heart of our expertise. It has been at the heart of our expertise for a long time. We have a platform, Marcel, worldwide, with all the generative AI tools for our employers for many years. So there are people in our company that would say here that we don't know how was the world before AI. We don't even remember. So it's very important for us now that we have these Gen AI tools that are everywhere, that all our employees can have access to that. So we have developed a lot of tools and a lot of trainings. But if it can help us, it can also harm us a lot. And we are in an industry where we are watched as sometimes have many impacts, and we can of course fight against stereotypes, but we can also carry some stereotypes. So we have to be very smart, smarter than AI actually, and not lazy at all, because AI, the systems, have a lot of bias. AI inherently is normative. You know, it's based on stereotypes. It's an aggregation of millions of stereotypes. So, for instance, if you ask for the new CEO's champions, you will get, for an advertising, you want an image, a picture of a CEO, you will get like 80% will be American, male, from tech sector. So it's by nature, it's composed by stereotypes. So this is where we need not only to give access to our employees to these gen tools, we need also to train them in order for them to be aware and conscious that it's not like they don't have to think about the intention. When you do marketing, you have to think about the positive impact that you have. And we have done a lot of improvement on showing in our advertisings diversity, different kind of women, etc. So we cannot go back to where we used to stand.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. We're going to ask you later about like who is Marcel, the tool named after Marcel, the person. So now, Mahasti, so you're an expert in IP and e-commerce and digital. How are you counseling? This is a changing landscape. How are you counseling your clients with all these changes to sort of deal with it? And give us a helicopter view, would you?
Sure, with pleasure. Hello, everyone. You know, listening to all of you is quite interesting because it shows that on the one hand, there is a great excitement and there is fear. At the same time, as Agathe, you mentioned it a minute ago, you've been using it for a long time. So now we get to a point where the use has become more democratized. And at the same time, the fear is greater because, of course, we're all knowledgeable about what it achieves. So to me, there are two key points for the advice of our clients. One is truly to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about. Technically, we must understand what we're talking about. It's not, as we would say in French, intelligence artificielle. It has nothing to do with intelligence. So what is the tool truly achieving and through what process? Why am I saying that? Simply because once you understand, then you can better cover the various issues or the legal issues that may derive out of the situation. So monitoring, of course, the technology, monitoring use cases, listening to, of course, everything you just said, and being extremely open-minded to all possible use cases is going to bring a lot of value from a legal perspective. Because then what is going to happen? We all have in all of our countries a corpus of legal decisions, laws, statutes, regulations, and so on. So that then the point is going to be, how is this going to be covering all of these use cases? And you were mentioning creativity. So for example, in all of our jurisdictions, there are lots of laws about protecting creativity. And so then it's about how we approach the tech with the existing laws, because again, it's just about understanding how the existing regulation is going to be impacting the effective use. Now, one point that is important for the time being, because as everybody knows, there are not that many laws particularly dedicated to AI. I think it is key for companies, and you all mentioned that as well, is to create some sort of auto-regulated rules, principles and policies that you abide by, and that is going to be creating more trust and conkomfort that is going to probably enhance the use of AI.
Yep, I would agree. And we also know that there are plenty of laws of product liability and consumer safety that that come from the analog world that we could be applying probably immediately to AI now, yes. So now we come to our last, not our last speaker, but here on this line, this august lineup that we have is Lisa Hennigan, who's the Global Chief Digital Officer of KPMG. And you oversee the execution of this multi-billion-dollar investment in tech. How are you, how does it preoccupy you? What are you?
Well, it does preoccupy me. Good morning, everybody. I think the interesting thing about AI is you can think of it in the same way as data or the word digital. And what does it actually mean? What does it mean to everybody? And it's going to mean something different to everybody in the room will have their perspective. It's not about the core technology, it's about how it impacts you. So one of the first things that I thought in the role is we have to create in effect, a framework, a way to think about technology and how it impacts our business and specifically AI. So what we sort of did was create 5 pillars. The way we market our services and go to market, the services that we sell, how we deliver those services, how do we disrupt our business model, and then the way we run our business. And by creating a framework, it may sound dull, but it actually really helps people within the business and the leadership in the business to think about their responsibility, their context, and to understand what they're trying to drive. Because the challenge otherwise is you get excited with the sexy stuff and the things that seem a little bit cool, and you don't actually look ahead. And we all know that AI is changing our business now, but really importantly, there are significant changes that are maybe 2 to 3 years out, that if we don't invest time now thinking about those, then we're going to come unstuck. So we created that framework, and then importantly, I think you said it, that there are some enablers that you also have to think about. Regulation, key, the whole trusted piece, security, but also adoption, how you actually get your workforce to be able to use the tools. And then you look at the ecosystem, externally, who do you need to work with to do this? So a framework has been very helpful.
That's fabulous. And now we're going to go do, and we have such a large panel, and we're halfway through. Now we are going to dig down, and we're going to talk about how, because I think you've set that up very, very well with your framework idea. So I start with you, please, dear Elizabeth. How are you dealing with AI on recruitment and talent?
Thank you. Thanks, Caitlin. And yeah, great perspectives, aren't they? So recruitment and talent acquisition, these are the lifeblood of a professional services organization like many of us are part of on this panel. Just for some data points from Deloitte, last year we hired 133,000 people out of 8 million or so applications. So definitely some scale that we have in professional services, and it's core for our sustainability is talent acquisition and recruiting. So the way I think about the impact of Gen AI on recruiting is a couple things. One is, of course, the processes and systems we use to achieve some of that scale, but more importantly, the skills we're looking for and the sources where we are seeking that talent, and being sure that we're looking in non-traditional sources of talent as well. And in fact, we know in terms of the skills that, according to Deloitte's AI Institute, that the 80% of the jobs of the future will be technology jobs. So let's not kid ourselves that professional services is definitely a key part of that, and we consider many of our skills to be, many of our jobs to be technology-based. And then just additionally to that end, the concept of talent acquisition and technology being separate are indeed not the case. They are related, and when we think about the workforce of the future, it is indeed a blended, unified workforce of humans and machines, of carbon and non-carbon, of workforce that will help deliver services of the future with our clients.
Yeah. I think also maybe we'll redefine, if 80% of the jobs are going to be technology jobs, maybe we're also going to redefine whether a digital anthropologist or an economist or a psychologist are going to be part of those teams. Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would also add that that is one of the reasons it's so important that we embed STEM skills in our women and girls. We do not want them to be left behind in the workforce of the future.
Right, and not forgetting humanities, maybe blending the things together. So on this non-traditional route here, we know that education is going to be transformed, the theme of this conference, and we know that also marginalized groups that have been left out, also from the majority world, might be able to leapfrog over some traditional things. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, so I love that you said that the jobs of the future are going to be technology jobs, and I think what AI is potentially doing is redefining what is a technology job. What does that mean? Does that mean, as we've been doing for the last 10 years, I've been at this conference and in many conferences before, talking about STEM skills for girls and how we include them into creating what is our future. But when we squint into the future, what STEM skills are today are not STEM skills of the future. And when I think about the tool that we're working on, it's just one example of how this is going to play out. Today, we're very focused on teaching girls how to code. We're going to have to continue to teach girls how to code because coding is not going away. There's always going to be coding to be done. However, why do we teach people to code? To code, we teach them to code to be able to participate and create things, create computer programs that are running our digital future. Imagine a future where to create a program, you can do that in English. You can also do that in French. You can do that in Spanish. You can do that in Swahili. You can do that in whatever language you speak. And you become a creator of a computer program without necessarily coding as we think of it in the traditional sense. So I think there's a future, and the way this will impact the workplace is that it will massively break down barriers and provide opportunities to include everyone in creating the digital future through creating computer programs in a new way.
Fabulous. So that speaks to me of being a creator and being in a creative industry. How do you see the creative economy changing and it for your creatives?
To be honest, today, my feeling is that AI gives a new value to real creativity. Mm-hmm. Because at the beginning of the story, there is always, when it's about creation, there is always an idea that comes from our talent, from our people. And then, because creation is about doing something that has never been done. So it's about people having an idea for a brand or a story that is new. And then, thanks to AI, you can very quickly accelerate the process of showing it to the rest of the world. But at the beginning of the story, there is always something very human. I just want to give you an example so you can understand that very quickly. And there is this activation that we did for Orange, the telco company, that I think that we have more than 100 likes and views on internet. So if you want to show it, see it, it's really great. It's about the women's football. There is a lot of bias and stereotypes about the sports done by women that is less interesting than sports done by men, okay? Which is not true, actually. And we did this activation for Orange where you see Mbappé, Griezmann playing games, and it's really great, But then you realize that it's just fake, and you were watching football done by women. So it has had a lot of success, and it was a human idea, very human, like from a creative person from our company, but it was so well done thanks to AI very quickly, and then crafted at the end, again, by human people that are very good in craft. So this is the link today between our creative people and the way we use AI in our process. For me, what it reveals, it's the value at the beginning and the value of the craft at the end. And in the middle, yes, you can amplify, you can go faster, you can accelerate, of course, but you need human intelligence to create new stories.
Fabulous. So that's, again, about it being an assistive technology. It's not about replacement. It's really about assisting and being more effective.
It's the co-pilot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not an autopilot. Let's be really clear. It's a co-pilot.
Co-pilot. And how are you co-piloting in a legal framework and integrating these tools into your work?
You know, it's so interesting because you mentioned your story with your creation. I think the same applies in our job and I guess in all professional services. You know, we use tools, we try tools, we're very excited. We spend a lot of time doing sometimes very boring things that don't bring value. So, for example, you want to summarize a court case for your client. And of course, it's very interesting to summarizing things, but of course, like, if we could do something maybe more interesting, why not spending time on doing that more interesting thing? So I think it's going to help all of us to be faster in some topics and then trying to really focus on what is going to be interesting for our clients, what is going to help them get more value from our advice. And I always like this example. I was teaching a class on AI a few weeks ago, and one of the students came back to me and said, you know, what is going to be wonderful is that I'm just going to get more time for myself in my professional life. And the other thing that is going to be great is that I will not necessarily need to learn as much. And the key point that you all mentioned your own way is that knowledge is still going to be key. Learning, understanding, being curious, being open-minded, trying to talk to people, understanding. Like, the more we're open about, again, our knowledge, the more we can be more critical about what we do, the more we can bring value, the more we can make a difference. So the tool is certainly going to be like Word. You know, when I started, we didn't have really Word. So it's going to bring a lot of help. It's going to be great assistance. And at the same time, it's going to question all of us as to how we can be greater lawyers for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, when you say that people would need to learn less, what they are going to need to do, I agree, more, is to be able to have critical analysis be part of their practice in everything they do. And that maybe this also needs to change in our educational system, right? Is to be the pushback and the questioning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Lisa. So there's a lot of, one of the first things people do, maybe not one of the first things, but there is an awful lot of talk and a lot of pushback about the job loss that is inevitable in any kind of technological advancement. How are you seeing this play out? How are you thinking about it?
Well, I mean, you're right. And if you think a couple of years ago, everybody was saying automation, it's all about taking out jobs. There's a lot of dialogue around lower level jobs that will be impacted. But then when we've talked, we've heard 80% of roles, if not more, will be technology enabled. So the way that I look at it is it isn't about replacing jobs, but people who use AI will potentially replace the jobs of people who don't. And I think, you know, the point that you made in that mindset of, well, I don't need to learn as much, actually, people need to see it as something that they do use to help them learn, exactly as you said. So therefore, you need to think about how are you going to enable people to use it in the right ways. And I talked about, we have this framework within KPMG. In there, we have principles. Our first principle is it must be human-centric. And when you say human-centric, it either improves productivity or experience or quality, so that you make it something that is positive. We're very lucky. Our demographic in an organization of 300,000 plus people is an average age of 27, 28. So we have an audience who are just absolutely thriving and wanting to take advantage of technology. But if you look in government organizations, financial services, many other sectors, it's a much tougher thing in how you're going to actually bring people through. But yeah, that's how we see it.
So we have time for a lightning round here. I'm hoping I'm not putting too many people on the spot, but really, I'd love to hear what your, either a vision for how you hope it would be used, or how you see it being used almost immediately in your, what are your hopes and your dreams for the technology? You want to go, we're going to let Shelley go first.
Put me first on the lightning
Yeah.
round. What are my hopes?
Well, ping
and
pong. Okay. No, Shelley, you go. No, we'll go Shelley, and then I'm going to go all out of order.
Wow, what are we doing here?
Okay.
What are my hopes and dreams for the technology?
Yeah, well, and it's being used in your in workplaces.
Yeah, my hopes and dreams, I guess, when I think about what we've been talking about at this conference for the last 2 days, is really it's no longer the question of are we going to use AI? It's really a question of how we are going to use AI. And so when you think about, we had this great discussion yesterday on the New York Times debate about will it kill education, will AI kill education? And the beauty was, like, even the people that were tasked with saying it would kill education were really just saying, like, it just needs to be thought through carefully and regulated well, and people need to be responsible. And so I think in some ways we need to all kind of move along and really think about how we are going to seize this generation-defining opportunity that we have to change the world. I didn't get standing yet, but I'm happy.
Yeah, there you go. We're gonna work our way up to a standing ovation. Mahasti, I'm gonna ask you next.
I think helping science and education would be my portion of the dream.
Lisa?
Yeah, so for me, it's about culture. I really think that AI can help us address many things that may be challenges that we have today. So as an example, in business, so many people think their value is what they know and what they do. And AI breaks down those barriers. It actually brings the knowledge and the information across an organization. So for me, what I really hope is that people can realize that their value is far broader if they embrace it, if they learn, and then they work across barriers, whether those be geographic or sector or whatever they are. I really think it can help us to break down those barriers.
Fabulous. Agathe.
Of course, I 100% agree with that. I would add that I hope it's going to be used with humanism. We have this motto at Publicis, which is Viva la différence, and AI is based on the majority, not the minority. So we have to use it with conscience, really. This is my dream, on top of what you've just said.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Yeah, like many, the way we think about it is this technology-enabled, human-centered approach to embracing the technology. And I would ask, as a call to action for the leaders in this room, to use Gen AI or the next technology transformation that will come to us as a way to both address the skills gap and improve access to opportunity for all in the world.
Yeah, I thank you so much. So we say, what have we heard here? We've heard human-centric. There might be even some, I come from Geneva, I can't help myself, a human rights-based approach for us to go back to these basic principles that we all embrace here and those values and build the technology on top of it. We've heard assisted, not assistive, not automated, so that to really look at these tools as ways for us to accomplish with purpose what we want to accomplish. We've talked about not only efficiency, which is good, but effectiveness and what is the impact, again, the purpose, and how we're going to wind up, and also this idea of being creative with this critical analysis at the core. So I think I'm very proud. I've got to say, I've been living in Switzerland a long time, so we're actually almost bringing this in early, but we have 3 minutes, and I want to, does anybody else want to add to this fabulous conversation? I was so worried about being on time that I must say that I sort of pushed everybody.
Yeah, can I
yes,
add
please.
Yes. You said something very important about the democratization. So I hope here in this room, everyone, because it was the case 30 years ago when we were in a room and saying, who has already used internet? And everybody was saying, yeah, of course, but it was not the case. So I'm just saying that, please go. I'm sure you have, but I just want to say it's very important. Use it so you can see how great it is, but how also sometimes it's not such a big deal. and you cannot be left behind or on the side of it. So just, voila. It's like, voila, just...
You're oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're right, because the thing is, we haven't got time to watch others and wait and see what we do. We actually just have to dive in. And it is, using stuff like Copilot. It's not everything that, you think it might be in the future, but hey, it does some useful things.
Yeah, I would just say, I would challenge the audience to think about, we're sitting here in France and I'm sitting in the United States, and as we've all talked about, this all requires access. Not only just in being able to ensure you've got connectivity, you've got electricity, you've got all this thing, but ensure that the culture is going to allow access. And so we need to all be thinking about, what do we need to do to ensure that everybody comes along, not just in your own city, not just in your own state, not just in your own country, but globally.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that, the access. It's access to data and devices, as well as being access just to the internet itself, and access to what? And that we have to sort of think all the way through to, and that's super wonderful that we bring everybody along. As we know, the SDGs, which I'm sure all of you know about, the Sustainable Development Goals, it talks about leave no one behind. We're also starting to talk about is how do we bring everybody forward with us, and that's what I think that you've all put. I thank you very much. Wonderful panel.